Hey everyone, it's Nightlight9, and in this video we're going through the second limited time crisis dungeon, Abandoned Factory. And the first team that I cleared it with was very similar to the team that I cleared Sunken Cave with. I set Cloud up with Zidane's sword, I gave Tifa crystal gloves for double X sigil break, and you kind of know what that was. But for this video, I wanted to challenge myself and be friendlier to new players since this one is, I would say, considerably easier than Sunken Cave. So I went with a team that's far less powerful, only about 160,000 total combat power. Now before we start, we'll take a quick look at the symbol enemy info. We will take note that every single enemy is weak to fire, and every single enemy can be broken with only X sigil break. So that's all we need to think about, X sigil and fire damage. That is as straightforward as it possibly gets for a crisis dungeon. But just to be thorough, I will go ahead and show you resistances. So the final boss is resistant to ice. No resistance on this one. This one is also Blue Dragon resistant to ice. Gallon Balor is resistant to electricity and water, and these guys have no innate resistance. Another thing to keep in mind is immunities here. As we go through, you'll see this one is immune to magic defense down. Other than that, all of the sub-bosses can be debuffed almost completely. And the main boss, he can't be debuffed on physical or magical defense down, but can have his attacks, both of them, reduced. So that is the strategy we're going to go with a team that is not quite as strong. If your team is strong, if you have a lot of weapons, this should be no problem for you whatsoever. Let's get into it. So the final boss does do a poison attack, but there is a buff that gives you 100% immunity to poison before you face the final boss. So we're not going to worry about poison, we're just going to take that to be on the safe side. If you didn't want to take that though, I think the other option is a fire plus 30% buff, so that could help you kill things faster. It just depends where you're at. We are not going to be taking the attack base buff, we're going to be sticking with the poison, so we're not going to bring anything for that. I've got a single base cure here, I've got X sigil break, I've got fire breach. That's going to help us get in more DPS. Other than that, setup for heals, we have 1888 heal, we have really solid physical and magical defense stats, and we have 5892 HP, no special costume, all free weapons for sub-equipment. This is for HP and magic defense, HP and physical defense, healing. Moving over to Aerith. She's kind of our, I would say this is a real combo where we have a primary damage dealer and a primary debuffer. Both of them are equally important for this run. Why is she important? Because she's got Tiger Fangs here to do magic attack decrease, stacks all the way up to high. We've got Leather Gloves for physical attack decrease, stacks up to high. Every single boss that you face before the final boss is primarily physical attack based, so that's going to be really nice. In the order that we do it in, the last two will be magical based, and so we will switch it up and start debuffing magic attack. We're using Somersault to debuff defense so that we can get in more damage, and other than that, she has Fire Blow, she has her X Sigil Break, and a stat stick. Sub-equipment, all free items. Torn Wing here is just good for general stats, it's good for physical defense. Iron Greatsword is good for just all-around general stats, and the Umbrella here is good for magic defense and HP. Last but not least, we have Zac. He's our primary damage dealer. I'm using Crystal Sword Z, never wishlisted this, just got a whole bunch of copies of it. First time I'm ever using it, in fact. Fire Potency plus 28 is the main reason we're using this. The AoE fire, it isn't bad either. However, we're also using Ifrit's Sword, which is another event weapon. This is where our main fire damage is going to come from. The boost HP is also very lovely. And we're using Ifrit on him, and all stat sticks with the exception of having one X Sigil Break as well. Sub-equipment, we've got both of the new holiday weapons for magic attack because both of his weapon abilities are based off of magic attack. Also good for physical defense, which is very important in this run. And then prototype Crimson Blade here, and that's just for a little bit extra fire potency. So that is the team. And I can tell you that out of a total of 15 weapons equipped for this fight, 10 of those are free-to-play weapons / event weapons. Only 5 are weapons that you have to draw for. So, without further delay, we will get into the run. Alright, starting off, we're going to go up these stairs on the right and immediately to the door on the left so we don't trigger the add-on fight. We'll come down here and fight the first boss, which is Gallon Balor. Now, as usual, switch your stance to defense mode as soon as he will get into the fight, because he will immediately do a rush. After this, switch your stance back and you're going to Ice Breach as soon as the charge thing comes up. Do a bunch of fire damage with Zack and get the charge gauge down. Once that's down, he's going to be stunned. Then hop over to Tifa and start Omni Striking. The goal is to get him max potency physical attack debuff. After that, switch your stances back, and Thunderfall will not do a whole lot of damage. 2,000, we can take that. Cure up, switch your stances back, go ahead and somersault, and then start saving ATB on somebody. I chose Tifa here. Just save your ATB because his Sigil Break phase comes up, and you'll want to jam that down as fast as you can, just to be, you know, the quickest you can and get everything done easier. After you interrupt him, go back, make sure you're Ice Breaching, keeping everybody cured, and just keep pouring on damage. This is one of the longest fights, which is why I've sped it up considerably, and I'm going to speed it up even more in just a second. He stuns everybody, he goes into another Sigil Break phase, which is the Mend phase, and unfortunately I wasn't strong enough to kill him before this. This part here, he does some AoE physical attacks, but ultimately it's just really boring because he's healing himself, he's got defensive buffs up, and so you just kind of get through that. It's a good time to charge your limits, and then you'll be able to get him down. So, even though this fight was the worst one, we still got a score of 55,000, which will be just fine. As far as these, I would take the Fatigue Resist, because these Leprechaun, or whatever they're called, the birds, the physical attack birds that are going to be 2 bosses from now, they are a huge pain in the ass. Alright, now we're going to move on to the next boss, which is Blue Dragon. I would pop over to Aerith, hit the Fire Breach, Somersaults, Hellfire combo. This is great because not only does it do a pretty good amount of damage to the boss, but it clears out the add-ons. And from what I can tell in this Crisis Dungeon, the add-ons seem to be the #1 thing that make these fights challenging whatsoever. So at this point, he's down to about 55% HP. We go over to Tifa. We're saving ATB because his Sigil Break is coming up. Here we see it on the hunt, and we'll immediately just start chunking down those X Sigils, making things a whole lot easier. He does do a magical attack here, Blue Dragon Breath, so, you know, be aware of that, but ultimately, you should be able to break him if you followed this kind of step by step. You should be able to break him easy enough that, you know, he's not going to do a whole lot more to you. And so, just keep hitting him with your fire damage and reapplying your Fire Breach whenever necessary, and that's pretty much the fight. This is a pretty simple fight in my opinion. Alright, and once he's down, we'll go ahead and take a look at our scores. 61.7, very respectable. And now we will get our bonus here. I thought about this for a while. I end up taking Magic Attack plus 30% because that's what Zack is doing. He's my primary damage dealer. Take whichever one helps you. And if you can't decide, the Physical Magical plus 10% is just fine. So, we take the 30% magical damage, and now we are going to fight what I think is one of the hardest sub-bosses here. It's the birds. I don't even know. Their name is kind of hard to pronounce. But these are the ones that can do the fatigue with the mud shower and stuff. Luckily, we're immune to that because we took that buff. But what makes them hard, they do physical damage attacks, and that's why I'm Omni Striking and trying to, you know, get a handle on that as quickly as I can. But what makes them difficult is I think the fact that they attack so quickly, and the middle one constantly applies a haste effect to himself that seems to stack, and will eventually stack up enough where he just continues to needle you over and over again. I mean, there's like no end to it. He'll just continually hit you with physical damage like once every second, and you know, that can be quite annoying. So my advice in this fight is, you know, try to get their physical damage down, but also as soon as you can with Zack, hit that Hellfire combo. When you clear 2 of them out, it makes things a lot easier. And also, like, I've never had any problems really charging my summons up throughout this entire Crisis Dungeon, so I would be willing to use them quite liberally. Here you can see, I mean, Tifa's down to like 700 HP, and it's just because of the frequency of their attacks. Shortly after, you know, I don't know, maybe I would guess midway through the fight, he'll start the sigil break. Again, it's just X sigils, so it's not that bad. I go ahead and throw another Omni Strike in here just because I'm not doing the most damage, especially since I took that the buff to magic attack and debuff my physical. Tifa is just not hitting that hard. But I don't really need her to hit very hard because she's just here for debuffing, and so I'm perfectly fine with this. And ultimately, we can just kind of outlast almost all of these bosses. So we finally take them down, and we will be looking at the next score here, 61,000 again. Very happy with that. And we will come forward and get our next buff. We're going to take the Poison Resist. I think that's a no-brainer. If you're really strong, feel free to take one of the other two, but I don't want to deal with poison. So that's just what we do. After this, we're going to come in this room, get our items, and there's going to be one more add-on fight in this area as we come out of the room. You can see what we have here. As we come out, we're going to get this add-on fight. And I'm going to show this add-on fight, and the reason is I've actually had some runs where I had quite a bit of a struggle against these guys. That's one of the reasons I'm somersaulting the middle one right off the bat and trying to get the fire breach on him and stuff. But I can tell you this. This actually was really easy because of Omni Strike. The only thing that actually can make this fight tough, especially for an add-on fight, is the fact that they start off with high potency physical attack buffs. So, you Omni Strike them down. Honestly, in the spray here, by the way, that's an AoE buff, or sorry, an AoE attack that's physical as well. So everything they do is physical based. Now, I also think it was a little bit easier just because of the route that we took and some of the upgrades, but I can tell you, Omni Strike them all, and this is no big deal whatsoever. I'm only showing this because, believe it or not, if your team isn't strong, I did have a problem with them at one point. So backtrack here, and now we're going to fight these guys. The reason we saved them for last is frankly because they're the easiest ones. And so I don't care if they're stronger than all the other ones because they're the last symbol boss we faced. Ultimately, they're just a joke, and you're about to see why. We do one Hellfire. It takes about 90% of his HP up, and with one more cast of his main fire move, it's over. That is the last symbol boss. So, 61,000 again. Happy with our scores so far. We get the last one, and here I can tell you magic defense plus 50% is perfect because the final boss, he does the tail laser. That is his big thing. Magic resistance helps. Here, we're going to go back to the very beginning of the stage, and in this hallway there is one more add-on. It's a lizard man who does physical attack and 2 ice bombs. They shouldn't give you a whole lot of trouble, but if they are, just use Tifa and physically debuff the lizard guy, magically debuff the ice bombs. They really won't do anything to you. Here, just to make sure that we have, a smooth sailing run, because we haven't used a single item yet, we're going to go ahead and use some items. Is it absolutely necessary? Maybe not, but I feel like we've got the S+ locked up. So I'm going to fire Cocktail Zack. I'm going to use a tent, and I feel really good about this. So now we're heading in to the final boss, and hopefully it won't give us too much of a problem. This boss, again, like I said, he uses magic attacks. He is weak to fire just like everybody else, so we start the fire breach. The only thing here, if I really wanted to do this easier, if you were having any trouble whatsoever, you could use the summon gauge boost, the item that you get. That would have put Zack up to full, and I can tell you the only time that I struggled even remotely with this fight was the very beginning here because of these add-ons. As I said earlier, the add-ons are the only things that make this challenging whatsoever. So, the moment we get Ifrit, we're more than happy to cast it, and we actually get the super combo, and this Ifrit Hellfire will easily kill off the add-ons. The Scorpion seems a little bit tankier, but again, once we start uppershotting him down, and I'll uppershot him as many times as I need to, I'm just really not very worried about it. Nobody's going to be in danger because he's just not going to be able to hit hard enough. So, at this point, just keep your fire breaches applied. I would keep everybody kind of topped up because the tail laser will hit decently hard. He goes into sigil break phase. I think you have more than enough time to get these sigils down, especially if everybody has some form of X sigil break. You can see here, we've got plenty of time with only one remaining. So just kind of do as much damage as you can. Somersault doesn't do anything here. I'm just using it for the extra damage, and that's about it. Constantly using Tifa, though, because we took that buff again, her physical damage is not that good, so fire blows aren't going to be super useful on her. We're just using Zac as our main damage dealer. You can see here, Tail Laser A is queued up. My magic debuff starts blinking here, which is not great. I would have liked to have reapplied it, but it should still be on when he does this move. And yeah, it does 3,000 damage to one of my people, but I think that debuff might have expired before he got that move off. Hard to say because we also took the 50% magic buff or magic defense buff in the last buff that we got. So that's going to be it. That is the entire run here. Once I get this combo off with Ifrit, he is going to die. And I really don't think that any veteran player will have any problems with these, but I also think that this is pretty new player friendly. The fact that you only have to focus on one element, one sigil, I think you can see this score here in a minute. 59,000 on the last boss. I'm going to get a score over 900,000, and you only need 700 and change, to get an S+. And this is with a 160,000 combat power team. So I think a team that was even significantly weaker than this could achieve an S+. There we go, 922,000. We still could have used more items, we could have done a lot of things, and still gotten the S+. If this helped you, subscribe for future content. I appreciate all of your support, and thank you so much for watching.